Good morning,
Hi.
everyone. Well, what are we going to talk about,
Today we're going
Kelly?
to talk about escrows and taxes.
Ooh, is that a good thing or a bad thing?
Well, it's a part of life, right? It's part of life. Everybody pays taxes on something, and it's a piece of the home buying process. A lot of homeowners just don't really understand. They don't feel educated about it.
Yeah.
And it can cause some confusion, sometimes some strife and drama in transactions. So we thought we'd go over it.
Yeah. Actually, around this time of year, I get so many phone calls from my past clients that have closed over the course of the year, questioning their bill, not fully understanding it because they've closed, they maybe paid some of the taxes, they credited the sellers, so they're a little bit confused.
Yeah, what do I owe? And also why did my taxes go up? That's a big question. Why did my taxes go up? It's a really good question for your town.
Yeah.
But we'll talk a little bit about how you find it out and what that may look like. So,
Yeah.
what happens when you want to buy a house?
So what happens when you buy a house? We want to check out what all our numbers are going to look like, right? So as a consumer, we're going onto the town's assessor's website to see what the taxes are for the house. Because sometimes they're not 100% accurate on the multiple listing service, which is where we gather all of our information. So that's kind of like our baseline to go off of. And then we do a little bit more digging on the town website. What the town website doesn't fully disclose are some of the additional taxes. There are some towns that have different districts, like lake districts or fire districts. Yeah, things like that. And it's not obvious. Like we were chatting earlier, you typically don't find out unless it's disclosed to you up front until you receive
title from the attorney's office. A lot of times we don't know. Now, we as a lender, we really do our due diligence. We have a special computer program that when we input the address in, it should theoretically pull all of the correct taxes. It's pretty accurate, but we are careful and we do try to actually call the towns as well. Tax information is public. So if you're looking at a house, you can call the tax assessor's office.
And you should.
Yep. And ask for the tax bill. You can also ask if there's any outstanding taxes owed on that house, which is not a bad route to go either if you're really interested in something. But we'll call the town. We'll kind of verify what the taxes are. But yeah, there are sometimes these little special districts that we don't know about. And the other thing that's always interesting to me is the assumption on towns with high taxes and towns with low taxes. And it's often not what you would expect. And it can be really confusing because as you're looking at, Zillow and all the MLS feed sites and you're going, oh, why is this house taxes way more than this house? I thought this town was nicer. That's what people tell me. I thought it has nothing to do with that. Taxes are set by the town government.
Yeah. Case in point, we were just discussing Wethersfield and Glastonbury, two neighboring towns.
Hold on. I have them. I'll tell you.
Data.
I have the mill. So one of the tools that I use is anyone can Google in their state, but we're in Connecticut specifically. Yep. You can Google the year that you are town mill rates, and you get a really great list of every town in alphabetical order and what the mill rates are. And Glastonbury and Wethersfield are very close together, and a lot of people look in both towns. And they're often really surprised because in Glastonbury, our mill rate is 37.32, okay, which is not low, but it's not incredibly high. It's kind of a middle of the road.
Get a lot of value for it.
Exactly. And then in Wethersfield, it's 40.67. So it's higher than Glastonbury. So what does that mean? It doesn't mean that the houses are cheaper in Glastonbury than in Wethersfield. It's not the case. But it means for the same sale, the same valued house, the taxes in Wethersfield will be slightly more.
Yeah.
So
which is surprising for a lot of people.
Yeah. They're like, what?
Yeah.
Hartford, really high taxes. Their mill rate is incredibly high.
Yeah.
There's a couple other anomalies around the state of Connecticut. Hamden, taxes are really high.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. There was a development years ago that was being built that literally bordered New Britain and Farmington, the same community, same homes, same builders. And in New Britain, their taxes were outrageous. And in Farmington, they were super low. And for people moving into the area, it was hard for them to understand that. Yeah.
And one of the things that I do challenge borrowers with taxes is not money that you're paying nowhere. Okay.
Correct.
So one of the things you should do is figure out what are you getting for that money. right? Are there services in that town? Are there amenities? Is there a great school system? Like
The
what
infrastructure,
are, what are you getting for it? There are towns where like trash pickup is a part of your taxes.
Yeah. Like Weathersfield, it is.
Glastonbury, it's not, right? You pay for that separately. So while the tax bill may be higher in Weathersfield, you're paying for trash separately in Glastonbury.
Yeah.
What happens there? So it's something that I really challenge borrowers when we're really crunching the raw data for numbers to take into consideration. And where do you find that out? You can usually go on municipal websites. There's usually a list of amenities for the town.
Yeah.
Do you have pools, public pools? Are they free? Do you have to pay for them?
Do you have a splash pad?
Splash pad, we got one. Is there preschool in town? Like there's a lot of stuff that kind of gets built into that, and people don't always think to kind of like dig a little further.
Yeah, even simple things like, raking your leaves and having them like sucked up by the big machine. Not all towns offer that, but I guess what I would recommend is make a list of things that are important to you and your needs, and then find out what towns offer those services.
Now, how do you pay your taxes? How does that work?
So it depends if you have a mortgage or not. So if you don't have a mortgage, most municipalities charge, they give you a bill and you pay twice a year. So July and January.
Yeah.
Right. If you have a mortgage, it's typically, for the most part, escrowed into the mortgage, which is really great because then you don't have to think about it.
Exactly. Yeah. We split it up as part of your mortgage payment. So if your escrow, if your tax bill, whatever the number is, we divide it by 12. You pay 1/12 of that payment every month with your mortgage. The mortgage company holds it in escrow, which is, think of it as a bank account that your savings are going into. And then when those bills become due, the mortgage company pays that bill for you. And it's nice. You don't have to then think about, like, here in Connecticut, right? We have the car tax. And it's not really fun to like, oh man, I've got to pay this car tax. You got to find that money. Now, multiply that by a property's value.
Yeah,
it can be a big bill, $7,000,
$10,000,
very expensive.
$12,000.
Yeah. It can be a big bill, and you don't want to have to find that twice a year.
Yeah.
So having it escrowed into your mortgage can be really, really helpful.
Yeah.
But what happens when you close?
So closing costs. So I've always told my clients, so I don't really get into the nitty-gritty of what she does, but when we are looking at different properties, depending on the town, so one town might have a very different tax rate, I tell my clients to estimate about 8 months worth of taxes to kind of put into the escrows. You're a little bit more specific with that. But
yeah, absolutely. So what I do when a borrower is interested in a particular house, they send me the address. I calculate out everything: the estimated monthly payment, the estimated escrows, taxes, homeowners insurance, attorney's fees, recording fees, all of the stuff that is built into closing costs in a property. And I give them a worksheet that has all of the data on it. Now, there are before you've made an offer on a house and we're under contract, there are some unknown variables to closing costs, like recording fees. That's how much the town you're buying in is going to charge the attorney to record your mortgage on their books. And that's done by page.
Yeah.
Isn't that crazy? It's per page.
And it's not $1 per page.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So it could be anywhere from $100 to $500. So we generally estimate the high end because we just don't know. Homeowners insurance as well. Borrowers get to shop for that. We estimate kind of a ballpark, but you might find a cheaper policy. You might like the Diamonds Platinum policy. It might be more expensive. But for the most part, we can gauge it really well. But taxes are one of the pieces because of escrows. How much you need at closing is really dependent on the town. Okay. What the mill rate is, what month you're closing in, when the seller last paid the taxes. Okay. And then we kind of have a calculation where we figure out I always explain to people that the calendar is a circle with January on top, July on the bottom, and you're closing somewhere in this circle. So you're always owing some taxes forward into an escrow account to pay the next bill, and some taxes backwards to your seller who has already paid a bill for a period of time in which you're going to be living in the home.
Yeah.
So you owe it back to them. So we usually calculate it out that way. 8 months is perfect for you. That's great to estimate. It's usually right around 8 months. It might be 4 forward, 4 back, 6 forward, 2 back, 2 forward, 6 back. It just depends where in the calendar. People a lot of times ask us, well, is there like the best time to close to pay the least amount? No, taxes are taxes and you're going to pay them no matter what. You pay for the amount of time you're living in the home. Yeah. So you're not going to game the system in any way. You're always going to owe it. It's just depending on, again, when the calendar kind of falls.
Yeah. It's funny because in Connecticut, all the towns do revaluations every 5 years. So that means the town is sending like a third party typically out there to just come and assess what's happening, like what your current value looks like. And it's just a snapshot in time for what's happening right now. I know in Glastonbury, they're doing revaluations right now.
Yeah.
But for the most part, and it's not always the case, but for the most part, every year taxes go up, and that's because of the mill rate.
It's the mill rate. It's not the value of your home. It's the mill rate, which is voted on by your local town government. It's part of living in town. People a lot of times say, well, taxes always go up. They don't. We do sometimes see mill rates drop. Over the last couple of years. There's been some variability in the mill rates in a lot of towns local to us. Do they often go up? Yes, but it is not always the case.
I actually had a client in Avon who felt that their taxes were higher than where the current value was. And so there's a time period after, I think, between October and February is the time where if you believe your value is different than what the assessed value was. And again, that was during whatever that snapshot of time was. And every town is different because they can't do the whole state all at once. But you can typically fill out an application, usually have an appraisal done, and go and appeal it. And my clients actually dropped their taxes by a few $1,000s.
Yeah, so it's something that may be worth it.
It might be worthwhile. Not always the case, but.
Do you have any stories about borrowers and taxes in purchasing homes, like surprises that came out?
Well, the only real surprises that I've experienced are the like the additional district taxes. And because again, they're not obvious. So if you go on the town tax assessor's website, they're not obvious. What I have found is if you actually like go to the property's address and like click to pay, a PDF will pop up and it'll mention a district. So if it's like District 1 or District 2, and not all towns have them, like Glastonbury doesn't have any special district taxes that I'm aware of. But if you see that, it also says flag next to it, then it might kind of like, perk your attention to that and say, hey, are there additional taxes? Because sometimes a realtor may not be aware.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's kind of the biggest thing. There's a lot of condos, like we were talking about, like Farmington Woods. Or there are some condos that also have additional district taxes, quarterly taxes that are typically noted in the MLS. But that also comes up when you get the resale package too. So make sure you don't snooze through that, breeze through it and look for the important, pieces.
Yeah. I would also say just a couple, like while you're searching, beach towns often have district taxes. So like Old Lyme, Branford, beach towns, because a lot of little beach communities will have their own taxes. Towns where there's large, like PUDs, planned unit developments, or HOAs that may be single family homes or condos, those often have special tax districts. A lot of times there's fire department ones. So like if a town has a volunteer fire department, but one section maybe has a paid fire department, that will be a fire district tax.
Yeah.
Or I also tend to find like really large towns. Glastonbury is an anomaly in not having districts, but a lot of times like space-wise, very large towns sometimes do. Yeah. But again, you can Google the town mill rate for the state that you live in, and you can usually find an alphabetical list, and it will tell you the town, the mill rate, and then what the special districts are. It does not tell you the houses associated with those special districts or the addresses. So that's where as a buyer, you have to do a little bit of due diligence. But it's also a question, again, like you can ask your realtor can ask the listing agent, hey, is there anything we need to know? Because you don't want to be surprised by taxes.
No, but that does happen. Actually, I have a question for you. So those special like district taxes, whether they're fire or lake district or whatever they might be, those don't get escrowed, huh?
Sometimes. It depends on the town.
Okay.
So it depends on the town. Sometimes they're escrowed, sometimes they're not. It depends on the town. It depends on the mortgage company. Yeah. I like to escrow everything that I can. So I attempt to put everything in escrows, but there are some towns that don't allow them to be escrowed, especially if it's a variable number, because that does sometimes happen with districts, is that it's hard. It's every year the new number is set. So it's hard for the mortgage company to collect the funds in advance.
Yeah.
Now what happens, this is actually a great question. It's really a me question, but I'll ask it and see what you know. Okay. What happens if your tax bill goes up and you've already escrowed?
Okay. So what happens?
So First off, the mortgage company's already collected a cushion. So we collect usually a 1 month cushion to sit in your escrow account in case there's a variance between what is being collected and what that bill is going to be. However, you also get an escrow analysis every single year that analyzes your whole escrow account, what's going to be paid out of it, what we expect, and then you either get a refund check.
I've had those before.
Yep, if there's too much money, or it will tell you that you have an escrow shortage. It doesn't mean you did anything wrong. But either your homeowner's insurance bill or your tax bill went up, and you can choose to either pay it in one lump sum. So say you're short $200, you can just send them a check for $200. It will bring the account whole, and then they will just raise your mortgage payment from that point forward to accommodate for the new payment. Or they can essentially tack that on for a certain length of time. You'll pay it over a certain, 6 months, a year, and then that will take care of that shortage.
Like a special assessment.
Like a special assessment, essentially. Yep.
But it's better than getting a huge bill.
Exactly.
So, yeah, I think that's all I can think of. I mean, taxes, I think, are pretty straightforward. It's just confusing when it's your first home.
Yeah.
Understanding how they work and just understanding like what you're actually paying for. Are you paying forward? Are you paying back? Because some of it is both. So,
and they're not necessarily a bad thing. I know people like to kind of, oh, taxes are so high, but you do have to look at what are you paying for? Where is that money going? Do I like the amenities that are offered, and are they worth it to me?
Yeah, the roads, the schools,
playgrounds, pools, splash pads, trash pickup, leaf pickup, newspaper. Like there's a lot that goes along with taxes, and you just have to figure out what your needs are and does the tax bill match them.
Exactly. Well, guys, thank you so much for watching. We look forward to seeing you next week.
Yay, bye.
Bye.